From the outside looking in, it's starting to feel like this entire situation was carefully engineered from the very beginning. Papoose and Remy didn't stumble into this outcome by accident. The endgame always appeared to be pulling Claressa Shields back into their orbit. And judging by how things have unfolded, that mission was a success. It explains a lot, including why that marriage never truly cracked under pressure. Claressa has long spoken glowingly about Papoose, often crediting him as the first man who ever treated her with genuine respect. What she may not have realized at the time, however, is that his unwavering presence came with a price tag. Quite literally. Whether driven by bitterness, honesty, or something in between, Remy once casually revealed that Claressa was Papoose's newest financial lifeline. She said it knowing full well that most people would dismiss it as jealousy or spite. Now, those offhand remarks are starting to sound less like shade and more like a warning. New information suggests that Papoose has allegedly been funneling Claressa money to cover his own financial obligations, taking and taking, with no intention of stopping until the well runs dry. Suddenly, the narrative shifts. Once upon a time, Papoose and Remy were celebrated as a symbol of black love. That image has since curdled into something far darker. As their dynamic unraveled, Claressa was publicly exposed as the woman Papoose had grown close to, and from that moment forward, her name became inseparable from controversy. Scroll through the headlines, and more often than not, she's trending not for boxing, but for relationship drama, venting online, responding to rumors, or defending herself against the chaos attached to him. In all of that noise, it's easy to overlook who Claressa Shields actually is. Not just a public figure, but a once-in-a-generation athlete. She's a world champion. A two-time Olympic gold medalist. The only boxer, man or woman, to dominate 4 weight classes as an undisputed champion while collecting titles across 5 divisions. That kind of resume should command uninterrupted respect. She even has a biographical film, The Fire Inside, telling her story. Yet somehow, her historic achievements are constantly buried beneath the mess swirling around her personal life. Every time her name surfaces, the conversation rarely starts with her legacy or the barriers she shattered. Instead, it centers on who she's dating, what he's doing, and what trouble he's dragged into her spotlight. What often goes unspoken is how valuable her position truly is. Claressa isn't just successful, she's powerful. And people around her know it. Papoose certainly does. He recognized the timing, understood the leverage, and stepped in decisively, ready to capitalize on everything her name carries. Claressa Shields isn't merely a champion, she's a brand. She's instant visibility, automatic headlines, and guaranteed media interest. Her presence alone opens doors, and suddenly, Papoose is walking through spaces that were never accessible to him on his own, arenas, major events, high-profile platforms where his appearance now feels justified because it's tied to her. These weren't rooms he commanded during his musical peak, nor were they freely available when he stood beside Remy who always carried more cultural weight and mainstream recognition than he did. Back then, he remained background noise. A supporting figure. Never the main draw. Now he's everywhere. And it's not because of a chart-topping record or a lyrical resurgence. The common thread isn't music, it's Claressa Shields. Truthfully, this is the most visibility Papoose has had in well over 10 years. His lyrical ability has never been questioned, but talent alone doesn't guarantee relevance. Respect doesn't automatically convert into demand. In 2025, there is no organic movement pulling him back into the spotlight as a solo artist. What does exist is Claressa platform, her interviews, her fights, her press cycles, her public story. And he has positioned himself squarely at the center of it all, benefiting from the glow of her momentum while the world watches her life unravel instead of celebrating the greatness she earned. Lately, it appears that Papoose isn't just by Claressa's side as a romantic partner, he's embedded into nearly every corner of her professional life. He's reportedly traveling with her non-stop, not only as emotional support, but officially labeled as her manager and even positioned as a boxing promoter. In interviews, her language has shifted noticeably. It's no longer my journey or my career, but our plans, what we're building, how we move as a team. Every opportunity is framed as a shared mission. Every milestone is presented as a joint win. On the surface, that kind of unity sounds modern and empowering. A couple blending sports, music, and business into one powerhouse narrative feels aspirational, almost cinematic. But when you pause and really examine how things are structured, the symmetry starts to break down. The rewards don't appear evenly divided, and more importantly, the risks aren't being shouldered equally. One of the most high-profile examples Claressa credits to Papoose's involvement is an announced multi-fight deal reportedly valued at $8 million with Salida Promotions and Win Records. She unveiled it in November with a full press rollout, describing it as historic, a bold, industry-shifting partnership that fused boxing, entertainment, and branding into something entirely new. The messaging was ambitious and visionary, designed to sound like a breakthrough moment not just for her, but for the sport. Yet when you peel back the language and focus on the foundation of the deal, the shine dulls. Win Records isn't a boxing promotion company with decades of experience developing fighters or negotiating legacy-defining careers. It's a music label. And not coincidentally, it's a label where Papoose isn't just signed, he's a central figure and the head of its hip-hop division. That detail alone complicates the narrative. When the person closest to you also occupies a powerful role inside the company now tied to your career, the boundaries between advocacy and self-interest become dangerously thin. This isn't a neutral third party fighting exclusively for Claressa Shields' long-term success. It's a closed loop, one where Papoose stands to gain regardless of the outcome. Whether the deal flourishes or falters, his brand, his influence, and his positioning all benefit. And while the $8 million headline grabs attention, deals like this are rarely as clean as they appear. Multi-fight agreements often come layered with conditions, performance benchmarks, revenue-sharing models, recoupable expenses, and promotional costs that quietly chip away at the advertised number. By the time all obligations are met, the reality can look very different from the press release. When a music label plays a central role in a boxing contract, it naturally raises questions about priorities. Is the primary goal to cement Claressa's legacy as a once-in-a-generation athlete, or to package her success into a broader lifestyle brand that elevates someone else's business ambitions? That's what makes this situation particularly troubling to so many observers. Claressa Shields didn't arrive here by accident. She clawed her way into greatness in a sport that has consistently minimized women, underpaid them, and boxed them into marketable stereotypes. She fought for recognition, for fair pay, for main event status, and for the right to be discussed as one of the greatest fighters, period, not as a qualifier. Every step of her career demanded discipline, clarity, and unwavering focus. Which is why it feels unsettling to watch the momentum she earned through years of sacrifice being redirected into ventures that don't clearly center her long-term legacy. To many on the outside, it looks less like expansion and more like dilution, as if the force of her achievements is now being used to fuel ambitions that don't fully belong to her. Another layer that can't be ignored is the issue of control. When one person occupies nearly every role around you, romantic partner, manager, promoter, advisor, and public representative, the question becomes unavoidable: where are the safeguards? Who challenges decisions that don't add up? Who says no when something feels off? In most professional sports structures, accountability is built in by design. Managers answer to athletes, promoters are regulated by commissions, and contracts are vetted by independent legal teams. Those separations exist for a reason. But when all authority funnels through someone who is emotionally and financially intertwined with you, neutrality all but disappears. Still, the story being pushed is one of empowerment. The message is that Claressa is in full command, that this is her blueprint, her empire, her strategic evolution. And to be fair, she isn't weak or uninformed. She's intelligent, experienced, and fiercely driven. But strength doesn't eliminate influence. Success doesn't make anyone immune to subtle steering. The most effective forms of control rarely announce themselves as such. They show up disguised as trust, as unity, as love. They feel collaborative while quietly consolidating power. What complicates matters further is how Claressa's public narrative has gradually shifted. Conversations that should revolve around training regimens, opponents, and fight tactics increasingly drift toward her relationship. Media moments that could spotlight her dominance end up centering Papoose's presence and role. Over time, the focus blurs. Her identity as an athlete becomes entangled with her identity as someone's partner. And in a sport where visibility directly shapes opportunity, losing ownership of your story can be more damaging than losing a paycheck. It can rewrite how history remembers you. At the same time, Papoose's visibility keeps climbing. He's now framed as a savvy executive, a promoter, a cultural bridge between industries. He's invited into conversations, panels, and rooms that were never organically open to him before. And the engine behind that rise is unmistakable: Claressa Shields' relevance. Strip that away, and the momentum shrinks dramatically. That isn't malice or jealousy, it's simply how proximity to power works. The irony is that Claressa never needed this arrangement to thrive. Her resume alone commands respect. Her accolades already open doors. What she needed, and still needs, is a team built to protect her interests independently, without overlapping incentives. Because when careers end and spotlights move on, it's not the managers or promoters whose legacies endure. It's the fighters. And history has a way of being painfully clear about who truly benefited, and who paid the price. That's why, beneath the celebratory press conferences and power couple headlines, there's a growing sense of unease. Not because Claressa lacks agency, but because her value is immense, and immense value attracts opportunism. Blending love, business, and power this tightly often looks beautiful at first. The cost usually reveals itself later, when undoing the damage is no longer an option. So when people hear that Claressa Shields is the first athlete to be signed under this kind of management structure, it sounds revolutionary. Groundbreaking. Like a bold leap into a new era. But once you look past the surface, what appears to be innovation starts to resemble a very old pattern. A management label like this doesn't just coordinate interviews or polish an image. It inserts itself into nearly every revenue stream tied to an athlete's career. Branding, appearances, endorsements, future pivots, everything runs through the same gate. If Claressa decided tomorrow to step into acting, entertainment, or another industry entirely, that same structure would position itself as both facilitator and beneficiary. On paper, that looks like support. In practice, it often translates to ownership without absorbing any of the physical risk. Management teams typically take 10 to 20% right off the top, before taxes, before expenses, before the athlete sees what's left. In boxing, a sport where income is earned through repeated bodily harm, that percentage carries serious weight. And management is only the first deduction. On top of that, Claressa is aligned with a traditional boxing promoter, which is a separate entity with a separate cut. A promotion company doesn't handle personal branding or long-term lifestyle strategy. Their job is strictly within the sport, securing fights, negotiating purses, booking venues, arranging undercards, and selling events to broadcasters and streaming platforms. They hype the matchups, craft narratives, and convince audiences that the fight is worth watching. For that work, they take their share, and that's standard across boxing. The problem isn't any single cut. It's the stacking. Management takes a percentage. Promotion takes another. Then come trainers, coaches, sparring partners, nutritionists, travel, medical costs, and taxes. By the time everyone is paid, the fighter's actual take-home can be dramatically smaller than the headline numbers splashed across social media. Fans hear 6- or 7-figure deals and assume financial security. Behind the scenes, the math often tells a far less glamorous story, one where the risk is carried by the fighter, and the rewards are quietly distributed elsewhere. This is the point where the presence of too many middlemen can no longer be brushed aside. Each layer inserted between Claressa and her earnings claims legitimacy. Each one insists they're essential. Yet none of them are the ones stepping into the ring. None of them are absorbing blows to the head, risking shattered bones, or gambling with long-term brain health. Claressa is the only one paying that price. She's the one enduring brutal training camps, sacrificing her body, and putting her future on the line every time she fights. And somehow, after all of that, it's entirely possible for her to walk away with the smallest share of the value she alone creates, her skill, her dominance, her willingness to fight. That imbalance starts to resemble something painfully familiar. It mirrors the notorious 360 deals that once trapped countless musicians. Those contracts allowed labels to dip into every revenue stream imaginable: music sales, tours, merchandise, endorsements, even side hustles. Artists did the creative work, lived on the road, and built the fanbase, only to discover later that most of the money never reached them. Claressa's situation echoes that same structure. She delivers championships, undefeated runs, and historic milestones. But the financial upside is filtered through a maze of agreements designed to make sure everyone else eats first. Which leads to the obvious question: how does the most dominant female boxer of her era end up here? Claressa isn't new to the game. She's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, an undisputed champion across multiple weight classes, and widely considered the greatest female boxer ever. This isn't someone operating from a position of desperation or lack of leverage. So why accept a setup that looks more like something a struggling artist might sign just to stay afloat? The answer most often whispered in boxing and entertainment circles isn't about strategy, it's about influence. The prevailing belief is that Papoose played a central role in steering this deal into existence. That's not just rumor. Claressa herself has said as much, openly crediting him during press appearances and making it clear the deal wouldn't have happened without his involvement. That single detail reframes everything. When business decisions are shaped by romantic ties, the line between genuine support and quiet control can become dangerously thin. Papoose is not a boxing executive. He doesn't have a reputation for negotiating fight purses or navigating the brutal economics of combat sports. His background is rooted in the music industry, a space where exploitative contracts and 360 deals were once normalized. If his perspective helped guide Claressa into this arrangement, it raises uncomfortable questions about whether her long-term financial health was truly the priority. It also reflects a larger pattern seen far too often, especially among elite female athletes. being surrounded by people who profess loyalty while benefiting disproportionately from the athlete's success. What makes this contrast so jarring is how different Claressa looks inside the ring versus outside of it. Between the ropes, she's merciless, calculated, and unshakable. She dismantles opponents with precision and confidence, mentally and physically imposing herself without hesitation. Outside the ring, however, she's still human, subject to trust, emotion, and pressure like anyone else. Boxing rewards certainty and aggression, but contracts punish misplaced trust. Athletic brilliance does not automatically translate into business protection. The broader reality of women's boxing only sharpens the concern. Despite Claressa's dominance, the sport still lags behind men's boxing in revenue, sponsorship, and consistent media attention. That means every percentage point in a contract matters even more. When a male boxer gives up large cuts, he may still walk away wealthy. When a female boxer does the same, the margin for error becomes razor thin. What's inefficient for men can be devastating for women. That's why so many observers don't see this deal as visionary. They see it as a warning. It illustrates how even the most accomplished athletes can be funneled into arrangements that fail to reflect their true worth. It exposes where real power often lies, not with champions, but with the web of managers, promoters, and influencers orbiting them. Each claims to be opening doors. Each insists they're indispensable. And yet, when everything settles, it's the athlete left wondering why the rewards feel so disproportionate to the sacrifice. The real loss here isn't just financial, it's agency. Claressa has spent her life fighting for control, fighting disbelief, fighting systems that underestimated her at every turn. Watching her become entangled in a structure that mirrors the same exploitative patterns artists and athletes have complained about for decades feels deeply ironic. It's a reminder that dominance in your craft doesn't shield you from the business side of fame. Claressa Shields will always be remembered as one of the greatest fighters to ever live. No contract can erase her titles or her legacy. But financial security, long-term stability, and the ability to fully enjoy the fruits of her labor can absolutely be undermined. And when everyone else has taken their cut, it becomes painfully clear who bore the real cost. Not the people signing paperwork in offices, but the woman stepping into the ring, taking punishment, and carrying the weight of an entire sport on her shoulders. Adding another layer to the concern is the structure of Win Records itself. Claressa is reportedly the label's only major talent, meaning its survival hinges almost entirely on her success. On top of that, Papoose is said to earn a commission simply for bringing her into the fold, on top of whatever cuts he already receives from her various ventures. Once Claressa books a fight, an appearance, or a deal, his hand is in the pot. And according to street-level chatter, much of the money flowing from Claressa is allegedly being used to bankroll Papoose's lifestyle and settle long-standing tax issues. Reports claim he hasn't paid taxes in over a decade and owes the IRS more than $300,000. Remy Ma reportedly owes over $600,000 herself, putting their combined tax debt north of $1 million. Remy Ma has openly mocked Claressa, referring to her as Papoose's come up, speaking as if she's above the situation. What complicates that narrative, however, is the fact that Remy and Papoose are still legally married. While Papoose has filed for divorce, it hasn't